Okay, so we're still waiting for more people to arrive, but I think we should get started because we have a lot we want to do tonight. And yeah, so everyone else can just like come in whenever they arrive. I am Annika Keils. I'm tuning in from Berlin tonight. I can see people are coming from very far, Mexico, Tenerife, Hamburg. Welcome everyone. Yeah, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be. It's so nice to see everyone again. We've had a little summer break. Yeah, so it would be awesome if you also want to switch on your video, if you feel brave, and then it's a bit less formal. Yeah, and so I am going to tell you a little bit about Speculative Futures Berlin, our chapter, like what we're doing, about why we're even doing this, and the organizers behind it, tonight's topic, and then I will hand over to our speaker, who I will introduce shortly. Okay, so as you maybe saw, this session is recorded so that we can publish it afterwards, and the people that didn't make it tonight can watch it at a later stage. And yeah, feel free to ask questions. There will be a Q&A session at the end of our little workshop. And yeah, so to start, Speculative Futures Berlin belongs to the International Design Futures Initiative, which is based in San Francisco. We are one of the biggest chapters in Europe currently. We just hit the 2,000 mark or membership mark on Meetup last week. And yeah, our chapter is not only a voluntary organization, it is also run and powered by Ellery Studios since 2017. You might be wondering who we are. We are a creative strategy consultancy, and at the heart, we design transformation, which is a combination of foresight, visual design, and participation. Here's a little snap of a few people of our team. We are future researchers, designers, and strategists. And we are driven by topics like climate protection, gender equality, human rights, and behind all of our activities is our motivation to facilitate change through design. And we're busy planning our events for 2022, and we would love your input and maybe even give you the stage. We recently started a global open call for futurists, designers, artists, researchers, anyone working on a speculative design, fiction, or futures project. And if you want to showcase something that you've been working on, please feel free to contact us. We want to work with organizations, institutions, and individuals that bring predominantly desirable futures and sustainable transformation to life. We're especially curious to see how foresight is applied in organizations, or what importance shaping the future may have in an organizational context. Any best practices, insights, methods, or future-oriented approaches. And it can be a talk, it can be a method hack, or a workshop like this tonight. And it's an open call globally. The beautiful thing about this virtual world is that we can all get together, and we're not constrained to only the area of Berlin anymore. Yeah, there is no budget as we are running this series on a voluntary basis. Yeah, but if you are an expert in the field of design, future studies, or foresight, you have a cool project that you want to share with us, there's no deadline. Send us an email. Yeah, Sebastian just added it into the chat as well. And if you want to stay in contact with us in general, these are our social channels. And we also just launched a website. And yeah, so before we dive into today's topic, there's a little teaser for our next meetup, which is in December, the 14th. And we're going to present a bioeconomy project that we as Ellery have been working on for the last year. And it's called Biofictions, funded by the Federal Ministry of Education and Research for the science year of 2020-21. And we, in 3 design fiction workshops, merged many future methods, like the future wheel, news from the future. And the biggest findings were translated into design fictions. which will be showcased together with our project partners, the Institute for Zukunftsstudien and Technologiebewertung, the IZT, and Wenzel Mehnert. So mark the 14th of December in your calendar. And we're also talking about design fiction today, or rather an approach that supports the creation of design fictions. Now, this approach was first presented at the Primer 21 conference this year, where we also presented a talk. And this is how we stumbled upon today's topic. We want to introduce this method that was tested with participants from all over the world to our own community as well. Now, before we start, a little introduction about design fictions. Design fiction is a new interdisciplinary approach to design research, and design meaning creating, shaping, meets fiction as in imagination and speculation. And if you combine those two, alternative states and future scenarios can be created. These can be objects, narrative, or audiovisual formats, or happenings. And design fictions do not provide a single or final vision of the future, but a multitude of probable, desirable, or undesirable future scenarios. And through them, we have a space for discussion and debate. Now, while design fiction aims at exploring possible futures, narrated through designed artifacts, the lack of structure when talking about futures can be frustrating. And Christian Grünwald from Z. our speaker for tonight, therefore applies the existing technique of advertising campaigns to provide focus. And advertising campaigns can be integrated into the approach of design fiction. And this approach is then, this mixed approach is called campaign fiction. And in this session, we will give a brief insight into how to use this world building potential. But unfortunately, we have pretty limited to the time, and due to the short time available, it is not possible to experience the whole process in practice. We would need a whole day for that. But we will be working in groups in a sprint mode to work along the campaign fiction approach. And yes, many people have mixed feelings about advertisement. However, it has the potential to be valuable for futures thinking techniques, as it captures present narratives of people, gender roles, social cliches, media patterns, humor, and our values. And when we think about the future, these issues, they also show our societal expectations about what may come and what can be useful to conduct future-oriented storytelling, but in a structured way. Now, lastly, I'm going to introduce Christian Grünwald to you from Z. the Foresight company. Z. is a consultancy for strategic future issues. And at Z. Christian is responsible for the public foresight division. Now, his work focuses on scenario planning, vision development, as well as trend projects in the public sector and industry. He explores the consequences of technological change for politics and society, the future of work, and the innovative application of foresight methods. Now, before Z. he studied political science and religious studies, and followed by a doctorate work for 8 years in a large German communications energy. Also the link to tonight's approach. He also works as a part-time lecturer at Leuphana University in Lüneburg. And that is it from my side. Now handing over to Christian. Enjoy.
So thank you very much, Annika, for this very nice introduction. I mean, you already explained perfectly the idea behind
hier um die Ecke speculative things. Ach so, ich dachte, das jetzt hier irgendwie.
Okay, so I'm hearing some voices here. Okay, so you perfectly explained already the idea behind campaign fiction, and you already gave a short introduction into campaign fiction, but I'm going to present you a little further introduction as Annika already pointed out, today's session can only be a short sneak peek into the methodology. So you'll probably have more questions when leaving the sessions than answers, but this is good because this session is supposed to create some more questions about the future, and the whole approach is designed to to evoke ongoing questions about the future. So I'm going to share my screen for a second, and I hope you you can see it.
Yeah.
Okay, does it work?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So when applied in the original way, campaign fiction is a way to create desirable futures. Today we have that very limited approach, so you have to work with some artifacts that will come from the gameplay of the thing from the future. So that they might be not desirable, so it's more explorative tonight. But if applied in the original way, campaign fiction is meant to create desirable futures. And as Annika already said, the approach was first presented at the Primer 21 conference, together with Max Irmer, my former colleague at Z Punkt and my co-lecturer at the Leuphana University in Lüneburg, who is in the audience tonight, so feel free to connect with him. He is quite active on LinkedIn, so he'll be happy if you connect him. So I have some music behind here. That's really nice. So whoever's playing the guitar, you're doing it quite well. So the idea behind it is, so now it's working, that we're ever more facing post-normal times. Post-normal times means that we are arrived in a world which is coined by the term VUCA. It's coined by growing volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And in post-normal times, the linear planning approach, the fact-based and evidence-based planning approach comes ever more to an end. And in post-normal times, we need new ways to think about the future, to try to explore the invincible futures, the so-called unthought futures, where we have to go in an area with some new approaches at the interface of theory and practice in order to explore these kind of futures and to create narratives that help us to move forwards in a way of sense making that generates orientation knowledge for us. So it's not only to think about the unthought futures, but also in the way of the futures cone as created by Voros, we need not only to think about the projected, the plausible, the probable, or the possible futures, but also ever more about the preposterous ones. So we experienced a couple of wildcards in this century, from 9/11 to the pandemic we are facing today. So we need to start to be more courageous when thinking about the future. And in these post-normal approaches, design, or the interface of design and foresight, does play an important role, because it could help us to create futures that were missing before in the debate. But when it comes to design is highly ambiguous. So if design is applied as a service, it could help to foster systems. Even if you do design thinking and you apply design in order to solve existing problems, it might help to foster the system. And this is where critical design comes in, because it's challenging the system. And we when Max and I were thinking about campaign fiction in the beginning, we were thinking about how could we take things from the, as you know, probably know this map from Elliot P. Montgomery, from the well-established economic activity side, from the constraint side, and put it into the more unconstrained side. So normally, if you do advertising and design in advertising, it's typically meant for fostering the system. It's just, yeah, it's promoting the idea of selling ever more of the same. But with campaign fiction, we are trying to use the structured way of thinking when creating advertising and put it into the design thinking context. So it's an opportunity to engage people in a design fiction context in order to come to alternative futures, to unthought futures, to preposterous futures. So with this campaign fiction, we are not reinventing the wheel, but it's rearranging existing approaches in order to come to an extended version of design fiction that helps us to, not to get lost about when thinking about an artifact, but to create bigger worlds, bigger future worlds in a very structured way. So, because that was the experience we made when we got in touch with design fiction, that people that outside of the design bubble get lost when thinking about design fictions. And it's quite hard to talk about it in a structured way. And if you really want to create some desirable futures in a structured way, we can link design fiction to other well-established economic activities like campaign development. So design fiction, and you will experience it tonight in a practical approach, is a threefolded approach from prototyping, over campaigning to world building, and it goes really from the micro to the macro. So micro, meso, macro. We are first thinking about the artifact, about some sort of a product or a service or whatever you create when it comes to the artifact. And then people start thinking about who could use that product. I mean, who would buy it, who would use it in whatever way. So we link that artifact to creating a target group best represented in a future persona. And then this target group is used to create a campaign later on. So how could, what's the unique selling proposition of the artifact? How can we convey a message towards the target group, to the future persona, in order he feels addressed, so he feels addressed by that kind of campaign? What kind of tonality do we want to have? And then we start to become ever more bigger when talking about communication channels. So what communication channels are we going to use? And these could be also speculative communication channels that are not existing yet. And when asking all these questions, you start to have a debate, and more questions are arising. So if we don't have, if we have that communication channel, what kind of technology is behind it? Why are people using that kind? What kind of infrastructure is behind it? And in asking these questions around creating that kind of campaign, we start to build bigger worlds. And in the end, we have all these questions on the micro and the meso level that help us also to inspire to build the bigger world, the macro world. So this is just a tonight. It's just a short glimpse into the approach. As Annika already said, it's best carried out when you have a 1 or 2 day, even 2-day workshop, so you can ask all these questions and then refine your steps all over again. And it's campaign fiction is a constant debate about the future by using that structured way of creating a campaign. And Antonia from Ellery Studio did a wonderful campaign once in our seminar at Leuphana Lüneburg, where she developed a little pad for the armpit for a world without water, where that is converting the human sweat into drinking water, so people don't need to drink anymore. They just need to sweat. So that was a little advertising campaign, and I want to give some props to Antonia here. So thank you very much for that. So as I already said, tonight, let's say this approach is best experienced when it's experienced in a practical way, because I can tell you a couple of minutes longer for just presenting it on a theoretical level, but that's not the objective of today's workshop. So we'll have just a little sneak peek into the approach today in a 1-hour session. And we hope to provide you some food for thought. And we would love to go in a further exchange afterwards, just to hear what you think about the approach. So we are working tonight at on a Miro board that was designed by my colleagues. I just copied the board link into the chat, and my colleagues Lea Oneko and Clarissa Schmidt were tremendously helpful to design this Miro board. So I would really want to thank them. They are in the audience as well. So I think they did a really good job here. So I'm just going to present you a little bit the Miro board. So we will have, I don't know how many participants are right now in here, but we prepared it for a maximum of 15 groups. Otherwise, the amount of data was too large and the board became too slow. So you'll be randomly attributed to your working group later on, and then we will ask you to find your group number. And the whole approach is designed to guide you through with some guiding question. But the very first task will be, as I already said, to create a little artifact with 4 randomly picked attitudes or randomly picked arcs, terrains, objects, and moods that you have in the thing from the future gameplay from Stuart Candy. So, but first of all, because we're in a campaign fiction seminar, you'll find up here, you'll find a little job advertising from Z-Punkt. So we're offering two jobs right now. If you want to work for Z-Punkt, please feel free to apply. So that's my advertising today. Oh yeah, I see a lot of arrows are going upwards there. And yeah, I think in the middle, right in the middle, you'll find a little digital crafting corner where you can, where we provided some input for you, or just some, yeah, some links also in order to create your campaign for your prototype. And yeah, I think we'll see each other then in yeah, in around an hour again, and just let me know what you think about the approach. And I'm going to ask some question later on, but right now I think we should yeah, just try to experience the approach. So there are a couple of questions in the chat. So, okay. It seems to work. So, yeah. We are starting the working groups right now, and we are here in the main room. If you have any questions, please feel free to come in the main room and ask us. Thank you very much.
All right. I think we're all back in the main room, right? Breakout sessions are over. Thanks, Timur. I know this was all very, very short, like time limited, and not everyone made it to the end. That's not a problem at all. That was also not the big goal tonight. The goal was to give you a glimpse into this approach, and maybe you want to look into the Miro board a little bit afterwards, and maybe under the shower, you're going to have some more ideas about how you would be able to create this campaign. I was able to tune into some of your conversations, and I'm amazed how creative the ideas are and what you were able to think of in such short time. And yeah, before we end, we want to ask you how you experienced this, what you think of the approach, and yeah, do you give us some feedback? Who wants to go first?
I can go first if you want, Annika. It's
sure.
Okay. Well, in our group, it worked pretty well. I think the structure is amazing because we started with an idea, and in a couple of minutes, we already had a very, yeah, a good concept of a possible idea that could be used in the future. Should we explain the idea or just the process?
I think we don't have a lot of time for it, unfortunately, for everyone to.
Okay, but the structure is great, and we were able to really work together pretty fast, even though we didn't have too much time. And yeah, in every point we had like a concept, and it was really a process in which you could imagine the future. So it was really good.
Awesome, thank you. Vencer, you also have some feedback?
Yes, thank you. Well, in our group, we also very much enjoyed the process. It was very nice to work with it, and I'm amazed how quickly you come to very creative ideas. So that totally worked. There was one part though where we were discussing things and coming up with some kind of a cult or more some cultural thing, or maybe even spiritual religious thing. We didn't really work that out yet. And then noticed, oh, okay, we can't go into this direction because it has to be sold at the end, because we have to come up with a product that can be sold, and we think in the campaign direction. So that was kind of, I don't know what to think about it, if I feel that's more critical or a good thing, but somehow it always brought us back to this, wait, any idea we're talking about, it has to be commercialized, so let's stick with that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, just to give a short answer to that, it doesn't have to be sold in the end. It can be promoted or shared or whatever, but the idea behind it is just to promote it in a larger sense. It doesn't need to be sold but I think the idea behind it is to spur these kind of questions and just to come up with new questions and to refine the process over and over again. So this is why I said you could also have a 2-day workshop with this approach, and yeah, you could really fine-tune your future over and over again when discussing the steps and do some iterative loops again. So yeah, so the question you raised is right. This is one of the questions you can come up with. Do we really want to have some futures where everything is sold or just shared or whatever? So thank you very much.
Bertha, you also have a question or feedback?
Yeah, just a quick recap of what happened to us as we went through the early, like the beginning part of that process. It was actually really quite fun, which I find super important in doing some of these exercises too, that they're not just for strict critical world making, but that they also provide us with an element of connection and enjoyment across cultures, countries, time zones, wherever we are. And then we very quickly slid into a bit of a political unpacking of the present situation in order to potentially construct something else in the future. And I found that rather useful. And hence the comment in the chat as well as to if there's a place for reference to revisit this for educational purposes.
Yeah, Max and I are working on a paper for ages, so this is our yeah, we're
shout out for collaborators.
Yeah, we're preparing a paper since the Primer 21 conference, but yeah, one day there will be a paper also for educational purposes. Thanks for reminding us. Thank you very much.
If that could be pushed out through the channels, that would be super amazing. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, and what you said, you came up with some political question. That's the idea behind it. So the 3 different levels, the micro, the meso, and the macro, inform each other. So the micro informs the macro level and the other way around. So it's about refining and spurring questions all over and over again. So thank you very much for your feedback.
And Christian, you can let us know when the paper is ready, and then we can spread it through everyone that participated today. We'll send out an email. And yeah, Lisa.
Hi, everyone. So yeah, I did, during my studies at university, I did a lot of speculative design projects and ended up working in advertising now, and sort of missed the whole speculative design approach. And I really enjoyed the bridge that you made with this, because that's sort of where I got stuck a lot of times doing work now and kind of missing the speculative part. So I do think I can take a lot of this with me to see how I can, have a different approach and look at campaigning now. So thank you very much. I enjoyed it a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Okay, Marina, you still have some feedback as well for us?
Yeah, I have a question. But firstly, thank you, Christian, for your workshop. It was a lot of fun. And I want to ask you, what does your normal process like with of coming up with like this artifact look like? You also started with like this some random like object, context of use, something like that, or you have like maybe another process as well?
Well, it's I think my colleagues from Ellery Studio can contribute a lot to this question, but I think there's no right or wrong in creating artifacts. I mean, you could look at actual challenges or problems that need to be solved. You can use trends. You can use also some science fiction inspiration, or you can use the thing from the future. So I think there's no regular approach to that, and you can use it. You can use the approach in creating the artifact which fits best your organization or your or your purposes in the way you want to deploy this approach. So yeah, I think it's but anyway, the artifact should challenge the existing futures, the familiar futures, the ones we have, the used futures, as we say in critical futures research. And so this should be the yeah, let's say the only characteristic the artifact should have.
Yeah, and as I said before, we have been at Ellery, we've been working on design fictions of bioeconomy visions. And if you are curious to see how we did that and how we came about the prototype day, you can join our next session. We translated the visions, or we kind of started with also a structured way of writing a blog post or a narrative to give people an idea of something they know. It's easy to think of this. They deal with the blog post every day. They know what it looks like, and then to apply it to future scenarios. And I think it's a similar way of applying a technique or a concept that you know quite well already to think of these different scenarios. And then we translated those into Instagram stories. So it's again, I guess, something that you know, to apply it to yeah, give shape to these ideas. Yeah. Do we have any more questions or feedback, Timo?
Yeah, sorry, I'm so illiterate. I still can't work out how to put my hand up technically in the icon. But I'd simply say, as a general observation, apart from great, we had some lovely ideas already. Miro and other things work really nicely, but they're also quite academic and abstract, which is useful when we're getting into the process. But I just leave with us all the idea of adding some storytelling theatre into the way we do this, in the way we set it up. Something a bit role-playing or a little bit more immersive, even in the process. And I don't have a suggestion there. It's just something I'm going to go away and think about, because I want to try and do some of these. But if there's a way we can introduce a narrative or storytelling bit of theatre in the way we present and explain the process, that might help people warm into character and think that way to then get into problem solving. And I think I just leave that with us all to think about what that might mean. I'm not entirely sure yet. I'm going to think about it. But I found this very, very interesting. I think it's stuff I'm going to be thinking about a lot afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your feedback. So, of course, we had that limited amount of time today. So even if we want to promote unconstrained thinking, we're constrained by time. So yeah, of course, it could be helpful to start with some icebreakers or role plays, as you said, to put people in the mood for futures thinking in the beginning. So that is a really good idea. And of course, we would do that workshop completely differently if we meet as a physical experience together in one room. So that would be completely different. But thank you very much for your feedback.
Thank you, Timo. Is there anyone else that wants to raise their hand? I think yeah, Peter?
Yeah, I just want to note that it might be interesting to use an interactive fiction platform like Ink or Inform 7 to be able to create an interactive environment based on one of these exercises.
Okay, thank you very much. This is well noted.
Okay, perfect. So I would say that we're coming to the end of our session. I hope that you take a lot of food for thought home, and maybe you want to look over the Miro board a little bit further. I think it's going to be open for a bit longer, right, Christian?
Yes, for a couple of days, I think.
Okay, perfect. And I wanted to also raise something. We noticed that some people struggled to find the link for signing up to our Zoom session today. I'm really sorry about that. Maybe every morning before the meetup, we will send out an email with the link and the password. So maybe that got lost in like some junk folder, just for future reference to check your emails. Yeah, so, but if you had to join a little bit later and you missed some parts, we are going to make sure that the input is posted on social media as well, so you can catch up on that. And I hope that you still had a really good evening and a nice workshop. And yeah, thank you so much for joining, everyone. It was lovely as always, and hope to see you on the 14th of December.